We'll talk about current salmon restoration practices, and we will finish up at the end with the impact of our salmon restoration program, both on the fish and the people. So we'll start off with what is CCC? Just curious, I'm wondering if any of you, maybe I can see a show of hands, who's heard of the CCC before? Wow, that's like the entire room. So I think that goes to show just how big our impact and influence is. Maybe can we get another show of hands for anybody who's been involved in the CCC, either in the program? Okay, we got some. You guys can raise those hands high. Don't be afraid. Oh, we got some people in Zoom land who also were. That's awesome. Heck yeah. So going into the CCC, what we are, we'll start off with our mission, which is to protect and enhance California's natural resources and communities while empowering and developing young adults through hard work and education. A little more about us. We were established in 1976, so 50 years ago. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary. We are a state department within the California Natural Resources Agency. Basically, we are a youth workforce development program dedicated to preparing young adults for meaningful careers and educational opportunities. We're also the longest and largest running conservation corps in the nation, which is pretty exciting. We've also expanded into a couple of other programs besides what you see here, like we do, culinary and trail stuff and wildland firefighting. But we also have several other programs like an energy program, the Backcountry Trails program, the Watershed Stewards program, as well as other international exchange programs and internships. Here's a little map of all of the CCC centers across the state. We have 24 centers across California, with 9 of those centers being residential centers where participants are provided with food and housing. Here's a cool aerial shot of the Fortuna Center where I work. As you can see, we're right on the banks of the Eel River, which is really exciting because a lot of our work takes place in the Eel River watershed. So it's really cool to know that all the salmon that we are protecting and enhancing habitat for also migrating just past our center. So that's cool. Another little aerial shot of the center. Like I said, we're a residential center, so we come equipped with what the core members need to live there. So for example, the kitchen and dining hall, the dorm rooms, a recreation area. I work in, oh, maybe I can bring out my little laser pointer. I work back here in the fish and fire offices, right next to the CDFW offices back there as well.
So how many residents would be there?
They typically have, I think they have capacity of up to about 80 people, but usually I want to say it's around 65 are there at a time. But it fluctuates depending on participation. Yeah, so I work back here in the fish and fire offices. We also host a CAL FIRE crew as well as a forestry crew. And we have a very small fish team and where we have 2 participants from the Watershed Stewards program, which we share in conjunction with the Eel River Watershed Improvement Group. That is very exciting. All right, moving along. Who am I? Wow. So I didn't really feel right talking about myself before the CCC, just because the CCC was such a huge part of bringing me into my career and establishing myself as a young professional. But this is all about me. I'm from Los Angeles in the San Gabriel Valley area. In 2019, I moved to Fortuna to join the CCC. It provided me with the housing and the job that I needed in natural resources. So that was a really great stepping stone. I did almost 2 years in the Seas before moving on to a couple of other things. I came back a year later to do the Watershed Stewards program, where I was placed with the CCC and Eel River Watershed Improvement Group. And I was hired back with the Seas back in August in a state civil service position as the fish habitat assistant. So that was really exciting. And I'm also on the foam board, which is really cool. We love foam. Yay! All right, a little bit into the history of salmon and habitat loss on the North Coast. What really led to the decline of salmon? There were quite a few factors in there influencing this. The biggest thing overall was habitat loss, which occurred from many things. Probably the biggest one being overfishing, logging practices, and the historic floods that we had in this area. Locally, some other things could impact it, like agriculture, especially the cannabis industry, roads, mining, pollution, dams. Um, at the peak of its populations, they said that the Eel River had about 80,000 coho salmon migrating up every year. In 2018-2019 season, they only had about 4,000. So there's been quite the decline. And as we know, coho are an endangered species. So we'd really like to do some meaningful work for them to get their numbers back up. So let's go a little bit more into those factors that led to habitat loss. Starting with the destructive logging practices, probably one of the most impactful ones. I'm just going to talk about a couple of practices that they did that really affected the rivers. One being the use of splash dams, as you can see in these two photos right here. This is the front of a splash dam. They'd create these so that the water would back up, and they'd fill that backed up water with all the logs that they had cut, so they could send them downstream. And they would purposefully blow up the splash dam so that all that water would just go right through the river and carry all those logs down, which not only scoured away really meaningful spawning habitat for the salmon, but also any sort of wood or debris that was in the river that might have made more complex habitat. We also had clear cutting happening, which was really impactful, especially with erosion. There's major canopy loss, and because of that, any sort of rain would hit that and just immediately flow down to the creeks or the rivers, bringing a lot of sediment with it. Not only that, but those clear cuts probably also contributed to how the floods affected us.
Oh, Rachel, we don't
Yes.
have.
Oh, this meeting is being recorded. You know, that actually doesn't appear on my screen.
Does it?
Please hold, everybody. We're gonna look around. Yeah, it's not appearing on my screen. Okay, we're gonna ignore it. Get back to it. Yeah, oh, yeah, maybe. Oh, no, I can't. We tried. Okay. Talk a little bit more about the floods now. So Northern California was hit with two big flood events in 1955 and 1964. When combined, they absolutely tore through our streams and either left nothing or they left giant wood jams. And it scoured away a lot of spawning habitat, like I said. These two pictures here, we have the Rio Del Bridge on the right here. So if you ever take 101 South into Rio Del, this is that bridge that you go on. This is like that little green portion of the bridge. So as you can see, that flow is pretty high. This left picture is actually where the Fortuna Center is now built over on 12th Street exit in Fortuna.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool that we have that historical picture. Yeah, so we know what's possible, but hopefully this doesn't happen again. And yeah, by the 70s, the salmon populations were getting pretty low, and people were figuring out that they needed to do something. And that is what led to the birth of the Salmon Restoration Program. So the Salmon Restoration Program began in 1980 between CCC, CDFW, and a couple of nonprofit organizations and private and public landowners with the goal of enhancing salmonid habitat and fully restoring the productivity of Chinook, coho, and steelhead through habitat improvements. Got a cool historical photo here of them putting some logs in a bank. This one, I believe, is from the 80s. So a little bit more about those early SRP efforts. In the 1980s, it was largely focused on removing log jams that were present in North Coast streams. It was thought, and maybe in some cases may have been true, that these jams posed as a fish passage barrier to salmon, which Could have been true, but we're finding out nowadays that not every log jam in the creek is a barrier to salmon. Uh, they're actually able to get past a lot of them. Oh yeah, and eventually, going back to this, eventually we realized that we took out way too much wood and we just like totally cleared these streams, chopped all that wood up and threw it off to the sides. Oopsies. We're doing better now. We really changed our game in the 1990s. We decided that we were no longer cutting out log jams. This is also the era in which we established our partnership with the Eel River Watershed Improvement Group. And together we really took off into the world of large wood restoration. So here's a couple examples of the kind of stuff that we were building in the late 90s and early 2000s. Efforts really shifted towards bank stabilization and erosion control. At this time, there was a large concern about infrastructure like roads. This photo here on the left is showing what is called a wing deflector. So they put kind of this rock armor up on this hillside here, and they have a log coming out that gets anchored into those rocks. And what this log does is when the water hits it, it scours out a nice pool. So this structure is kind of doing two things at once. It's protecting the bank from erosion, and it's also scouring out some deeper cool water habitat in there. On the right, we have a core member drilling into a rock. So like I said, they anchored that log into the rocks. To do that, they have to drill into it and put some hardware in there to get it to stay. Efforts were also focused on native species planting. So we have some willow planting going on here. And also the construction of rock weirs. This is an example of a rock weir on Bull Creek that they made back in the day. Rock weirs were helpful for creating jump pools for the salmon. So they need a pool of water to swim in order to kind of gain speed and jump up over an obstacle. And rock weirs are also helpful for gravel retention. And if you don't know too much about salmon and their needs, they need a specific kind of gravel size in order to spawn. So we kind of want like the smaller gravel and not a bunch of boulders. And so these rock weirs were really helpful with capturing gravel as it came downstream. And in this era, we also began building some of our large wood structures. I have a couple here. I believe this left one's on Bull Creek. This right one, I think, is a tributary to Bull Creek in that same area. As you can see, these structures are pretty simple. These are one log structures. Not all of our structures back then were one log ones, but some of them were a little more complex. I don't know if you can really see here, but there's a boulder on the left of this log with a little cable attaching it to the log. And that was one way that we would anchor the logs, is by using a cable attachment. Yeah. Well, that was a little bit about our past efforts. Let's talk about what we're doing now, because things have changed. Whoa. Okay, I don't know if this is working. All right, so our first step is to determine streams to target for restoration. First, we start by consulting existing data, either from CDFW, NOAA, tribes, or other sources. We also consider existing recovery plans. We'll contact landowners for access and their perspective because they know their land better than most people. And we'll get out and get eyes on the creek. So a little bit more into each of those steps. We'll start with consulting the existing data. We perform habitat surveys. So we're actually going out there. We're looking at fish passage barriers or other things going on with the creek. What the creek physically has. Here we have some examples of some fish passage barriers. Could be some small log jams like this. Here's me. Wow. Or this is this crazy big log jam. I don't know. Looks a little dark up there, but it's basically just all these layers of old growth and other trees falling over each other. I have not been to that specific one, so I don't know if the salmon can get past it.
What creek was it?
I don't know about the right one, but the left one is Monument Creek. or is it Monument? It's by Monument Creek. I don't remember the name. Okay, carrying on. We're also conducting biological surveys such as spawner surveys, snorkel surveys, or electrofishing. And this is a way of just seeing, are there fish? What kind of fish?
Can you describe that electrofishing?
I actually haven't done too much e-fishing myself, but some organizations will go out and they basically have like a little backpack and a thing that they put in the water, and they send out a small current that will shock the fish, but not enough to kill them. And it only works for smaller fish. Yeah, I haven't done too much e-fishing stuff myself, so I'm not an expert on it, and I probably can't tell you any more than that. Tiffany, is that what they're doing? No, they are not.
So then you catch the stunned fish in the net.
Yeah, yeah. Or take other data on them. So, yeah. We're also considering existing recovery plans, such as the SHARP, which is the Salmon Habitat Restoration Priorities. This gets a lot of folks in the restoration world together to figure out where we should target our restoration efforts. We also have QUAPAP, the Coastal Watershed Planning and Assessment Program, which collects data on South Fork eel streams with useful info about fish and habitat types. The South Fork eel watershed is pretty well assessed and monitored by CDFW, so we have a lot of really good data about what it needs and where we can put our restoration efforts. And this watershed gets this focus just because they're like one of the last remaining good stands of endangered coho salmon populations. So we're trying to keep it that way. We'll contact landowners for their access and perspective. Here I have an example of a parcel map with the streams on it. So for example, maybe we'd be targeting this little fork of the stream for restoration. If that's the case, then we have to contact each one of these landowners, make sure we have their permission to go on their land, see what the access is like, see if they want us to do restoration, maybe see their perspective. Maybe they've seen fish there, maybe they haven't seen fish. And if we are going to make a restoration project, we'd probably also contact all the landowners in the whole area and get their permission or perspective, or just let them know like, hey, this is going to be going on. A lot of people are usually very open to it, but we also get some folks who do not want anything happening on their property, it's understandable. It's their land. And lastly, we are getting out and getting eyes on the creek. We're going to look at what the restoration potential of those creeks are. So here's some pictures that I have of some local creeks. And this is what we're seeing a lot of the time is these creeks that are missing the presence of wood. And it kind of creates this long flatwater habitat where in the winter, when we get up to really high flows, this just becomes a super fast channel of just riffles and rapids and not a lot else. It's kind of just like it's like the salmon are on the freeway and they're on the freeway the whole time and they can't get off the freeway. There's nowhere to pull over or park. They're just stuck going 75 miles an hour the whole time, but not literally because they're salmon. But yeah, there's nothing present in these creeks to really slow the water down or create something else. And salmon need pools and covered areas to rest in, not only when they are migrating upstream as adults to spawn, but also when they're juveniles migrating out to the ocean. They need little hidey holes and spots to hang out. So when we're out in these creeks, we are looking at how much wood is there. Is the stream aggrading, like sediment building up, or degrading, like eroding? How big is the substrate of the creek? Are there enough pools in the creek? Is there good spawning gravel? How steep is the creek? So these are some of the things that we like to consider before we do a restoration project. Here's another example of some more streams. What we're also seeing in these streams is alders becoming the dominant species in the riparian canopy. They do provide decent canopy, but alders are pretty small. They're easily uprooted. When they do fall into the creeks, they get swept away pretty easily, and they don't have much of an impact. We kind of just have to remember that a lot of our local creeks were once lined with old growth redwood as the dominant riparian species. So we kind of want to emulate that a little bit with our work. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. After we look at the creek and we decide we want to do something there, we go into our design, which typically takes place in the late winter and spring. So right now is the season. We look at creeks with low amounts of large wood and little stream diversity. The design of the structure is pretty specific to that particular spot in the creek and what it needs. Logs can be used in structures to scour out pools, capture gravel, capture large wood, provide slow water refugia in the wintertime. So when we are designing, here's some of the things that we are looking for. So we're taking a lot of data out there when we design our projects. I'm not going to read all these out loud because that'll be a little bit much. But as you can see, we're not just going out there and saying like, oh, hey, like, let's just throw some wood in here. We're looking at very specific things and looking at the needs, looking at what's already existing there, and coming up with objectives that make sense. So we'll look at a couple more design photos. This is a pretty robust structure compared to those ones that we were seeing earlier. As you can see, we have not only a sketch of what we want to put in, but we also have that data being taken at the top. We're taking all this information because these designs are submitted for grants, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
And those logs are all pointed uphill. Don't they move under high water flow?
Yeah, they do. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, part of these logs are resting on the banks and part of them will be in the creek. And the reason for that is because we anchor our structures onto live trees or boulders on the bank, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So you'll get to see it a little better. Here's a really crazy structure. Look at this thing. It's a lot of logs. If you're wondering about some of these numbers, we kind of estimate a footage for how long our logs need to be. So as you can see, some of these are pretty big. We got some 50-foot trees in here. We have a whole tree sometimes that we put in. Got some root wads being put in. Like I was telling Elliot, we anchor our structures to live trees on the bank, and that's what these little circles are. It kind of just maps out where the live trees are. These little lines going into the trees are where our anchor points will be. I'll talk a little bit more about the anchoring process as we move on. One other thing I did want to mention is that we're kind of moving away from anchoring, actually. Well, not totally, but trying to do less anchoring. We want to get as little hardware in the creek as possible. So where we can, we are trying to wedge logs between trees. Some examples you can see are, this one is wedged between two trees here. This one's also wedged between two trees. So sometimes if we get a nice wedge, we don't have to anchor a log, which is great because then we're putting less hardware and metal in the creek. And we'll talk a little bit more about the anchoring process and what we use. But yeah, as you can see, sometimes it gets pretty complex. Here's an example of a design and the structure that was built from the design. We've got this boulder right here is this large boulder here. This little kind of dashed circle is this boulder right in the middle. And this structure was built pretty much as designed, which is nice to show as an example.
Do you harvest those logs locally or do you have to truck them in?
It's a little bit of both. I would say sometimes it depends on what the landowner wants. Sometimes they're logging companies who are super open to us taking a couple trees. Um, Sometimes if we have access, we'll purchase logs and have them brought in, but usually they're purchased locally as well. So they're not coming from other states or anything. Um, but yeah, great question.
And what time of year is that? Get covered.
Yeah, so this photo looks like it was taken in October, so it's kind of the end of our dry season and also the end of our season for working. Most of the installation happens in the summertime when the water's real low like this. It just makes less of an impact from people in the creek. Um, it's a lot safer and easier for us, and we're not affecting juveniles quite as much or spawning habitat in that time.
Can I
Yeah.
ask?
So do you only work on creeks that have year-round flow?
Um, as it, that's a good question. I would say most creeks have at least water year round or a pool. They might not necessarily have flow going all the way, but they might have little habitats set out in there already. Yeah.
Can I ask a question out here?
Oh, sure. We have a question in Zoom land.
So this picture you're showing us, what's this thing supposed to do with all these different things? Can you point out what's going to happen in there?
Yeah, that is a great question. So the idea is that in the winter time, when you guys didn't hear the question. Okay, so he said like, what is the purpose of this? What's it gonna look like? What's it gonna do? Basically, the idea is that in the winter, we'll get high water flow coming in and fast water coming in. Basically, we just want to put some logs in and then we go hands off and let the water do the rest of the work. When high flows hit that, it's gonna scour out pools in the gravel. It could direct water in a different direction. We might be opening up floodplains or side channels. Or some of these logs are just in here to provide cover for the salmonids. They're just there as a little hidey hole for them. Um, which is kind of more what that log that you see perpendicular in the creek is doing. Whereas one like maybe this one's sticking out, this one's coming upstream, right in the middle of the stream. That one's probably going to get hit with a lot of fast water and hopefully scour out something right there. Cool. Oh, and we have another example of a wedge on this one, like I was talking about, where we get it between some trees. So it's between this little alder and these alders right here. So when the water comes and hits it, hopefully the idea is that'll stay there a little better. All right. Our structures are not always just as simple as logs. We've been talking about boulders going in as well. Boulders are really great for scouring out as well as just holding everything together. We get these crazy big chains and use them to anchor the logs to the boulder. As you might have seen in the old photo, we used to use cable, but now we're switching over to chain. We also like to use root wads and whole trees. The salmon are really big fans of the root wads. It's like the best hiding hole you can give them. It's like a cool hotel with a bunch of roots and different rooms they can visit. So they're fans of the root wads, and so am I. Yeah, they're just really complex, which is nice. Okay, yes. All right, our next step after designing is we're gonna apply for grants and funding. So the designs and the plans are submitted to potential funders. A lot of our funding comes from the Fisheries Restoration Grant Program, also called FRGP, which is a program with CDFW that funds the restoration and protection of salmonid habitat. We also have some internal funding resources within CCC, like our Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And this whole process of designing the project, applying for grants, getting it approved, and then actually starting work takes several years, probably 3 years at the minimum. And yeah, just going back into our grants a little bit, we are dealing with some uncertainty in these programs, and they've been significantly impacted by administrative changes, and as a state employee, I will talk no further about that.
Well, there's a deficit, right, in California right now?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, and well, going back to this, well, I guess I can talk a little bit more about this, but particularly the FRGP grant program, even though it is a program with CDFW, that money actually comes from NOAA as the first source, and then they give it to CDFW. So I'll let you guys figure out the rest. NOAA is, yeah, that just made me think, I never actually learned the acronym for it. Thank you, everybody, for answering that. Yeah, the weather people. All right. So let's actually talk about getting the logs in the creek. How are we doing that? Well, sometimes if we have really great access, we get equipment to come do it because it's way quicker, way easier. We can get bigger logs in the creek. We can get them exactly where we want them. But this is only nice when we have a decent road and good access. But if we have no access, that's not a problem either because we have muscle. And that is where the CCC really comes into play, is getting out to remote creeks and doing habitat restoration in places that vehicles can't always get to. And we do that using the power of people and the grip hoist, which I have out here on the table for you all to see. We can ooh and ah. And I'll let you guys mess around with that or show you how it works too.
You said how much that weighs?
It weighs about 65 pounds. Yeah. Yeah, I gotta walk it out of here too. So if anybody's not doing anything later. But yeah, this is literal tons of equipment that is being hiked up these creeks by the Corps members. The grip box weighs 65 pounds, but our wires also weigh over 50 pounds most of the time. I have a cable under the table in case you guys can't see. Not only that, but other pieces of equipment, like for example, this clevis here, this is like maybe 10 pounds itself. So, and sometimes we need like 15 of those out there for the whole crew and everybody. So you can imagine that equipment really builds up, and it's a lot. It's a lot to move. But yeah, lets us get out to really remote areas and perform much needed restoration work. Let's talk a little bit more about the grip hoist, because this is quite the invention. This thing's cool. It is a powerful thing. Let's talk about some of the components. So there's a cable that runs through the grip hoist box. There's a hole at either end of it. Cable can run all the way through. And usually that cable can get choked down on logs that we want to move. Fortunately, I couldn't really find a great picture of a choker or anything like that, but you can imagine there's a wire with like a cinching end on it, and that's how it attaches to a log we want to move. Now that that's cinched down on a log, we kind of anchor this grip hoist to a live tree temporarily. We strap it on there with a strap around the tree. And yeah, that just kind of serves as an anchor point for this grip hoist to hold on to. There is a handle that goes on top of the box. I actually brought a handle here too. As you can see, it goes right on. When you move this thing back and forth. Oh God. Sorry to anybody who saw that dust that came out just now. Yeah, so that's about to pop up. Don't worry. We'll talk about that. Yeah, so the handle gets craned back and forth, and that pulls the wire through a small amount at a time, half an inch for every stroke. That's how far the trees are moving. So every time you go like this, the tree moves forward a half inch. So you really got to do it a lot. And it's not an easy back and forth. It's back and forth. The mechanism inside the box kind of grasps onto the wires and pulls them through. So you can imagine like kind of like your hands, like it's pulling it a little bit at a time, half inch. The two handles on top, that front one that I put it on is the grip handle. So that brings logs towards the box. That back handle is a slack handle. So if you crank on that one, it pushes the wire out of the box. And there's also a freewheel mode where the wire could go either direction through the box. That's kind of how you unlock it. So yeah, that's the grip hoist. Very, very cool invention. I'm a big fan. But it's kind of hard to explain the grip hoist and how it works without actually seeing it. I have a couple pictures here of some grip hoists set up. We have a core member on a grip hoist with the handle and the box. This box is, like I said, it's strapped to this live redwood right here. So it's anchored down there, and the wire runs all the way down to this log over here. And it looks like they have kind of a more of a complex setup. There's different setups you can do with this to make it do different things. So it comes back towards the tree. It might be anchored back over here. In this photo, kind of same things going on. There's a core member up on the hill here with the grip box. The wires come down and they're cinched on the log over here. So the idea is they're cinched down on this log and they're moving it in that direction. But pictures don't make sense. Let's watch some videos. Check it out. They're moving a whole tree. So as you can see, it's not a fast process. Play that again. So they crank on the box. The wire goes through the box a little bit at a time. And that log just slowly, slowly moves a little bit closer. Let's watch another exciting video. This one's fun. This is a splash video. I don't know why the quality is so bad, so sorry. So we have a core member over here at this tree with the grip box. He's going to start gripping, bring that log towards the tree. Oh, splash. Yeah, super cool. This is on Sproul Creek, which kind of flows out through Garberville, if any of you have ever been there, and Sproul Creek is a really great, very active watershed for salmon. They love it. So we've done a lot of work out there. One last video for you guys. This one's a time lapse, so you'll be able to see a little better just how long this takes. Yeah, not only is it going to take a long time, but it's taking a lot of people, taking a lot of movement. Things get readjusted as you go. They move it a little, they crank it a little, and then they have to set things back up again, fix where the choker is. We're always kind of changing the position of the log. These grip hoists really only allow us to pull in one direction at a time. So if we kind of have to like pull a little bit and then, oh, we have to go this way. Oh, we have to go this way. So there's a lot of adjustment that happens.
And that's
Yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty dry in the summer too. I believe this is also Sproul Creek. Yeah. Ooh.
Are we watching a whole afternoon?
Yeah, basically this video comes down to a whole afternoon. We're not gonna watch the whole video because it's like 8 minutes long. Yeah, everybody's locked in on this. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. There's a funny part of this video where one of the core members is gonna sit down and they have their lunch and they kind of like slowly eat their lunch away. Ooh. Yeah, core member with chaps on, or oh, that's not even a core member. That's just Dave. Yeah, so sometimes we use a saw or other equipment as opportunities to use other power tools. Sometimes we might have to like cut a log in half like he's doing there, or trim a little bit off. Maybe it won't fit where we want it to go. Sometimes we need to cut one big log into 2 logs.
so how many logs have you used?
I believe this section is this is actually part of that one design that we were looking at earlier with the big boulder where it showed the design and then how it was built. I believe that one was about 6 or 7 logs. So Um, yeah, it depends. It could be more or less than that.
How long ago was this project done?
This project is from, I think this one's 2021. Whew, taking a while.
So that's two of them at work, right? If you got, each log has its own.
Yes, that is correct. We have multiple grip boxes at work here. It could be 3 grip boxes. I'm not really sure.
This is very.
Oh yeah, and now they have some rock bars. It looked like they were trying to pivot the log a little bit.
Somebody's dancing.
Yeah. Yeah, so that core member in the back is gripping, so they're just going back and forth with the grip box. I was hoping you get to the lunch break part because it's really funny.
You can keep asking me questions.
Yeah, keep asking me questions.
So does everyone have an assigned job, or is it, this is what we need and everybody piles them?
I would say it's the second. Yeah, it's nobody's really assigned a specific job, especially because it's so physical. You know, we want to switch off with one another and make sure we're not tiring ourselves out too much, or putting all the physical labor on one person. There are specific tasks that might go to one person, like, you know, maybe only one person can use the chainsaw. So they'll do that, but it's usually only for short. Oh, here we go. So funny. He is. Just wait and see what he pulls out next. Yeah, this is his time lapse, so he knew what he was doing. Yeah. Oh, he's not done yet. Let's do another one. Yep. Gotta enjoy that. That was a hard, well-earned lunch.
Was that a fruit strip?
That was, yeah, that was a fruit roll-up, or fruit by the foot, actually. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll carry on now. I'll come back to this video at the end. Maybe I'll have it just playing in the background.
Super good. That your job?
Yeah, for the most part. Supervising, helping out. I'm still doing the work too. I think it's important to do what the core members do and not leave all the hard labor to them. So after our logs are in place, we anchor the logs, like I was talking about, either to each other or to live trees. Down here in the bottom right, we have an example of a log being anchored to another log. Here in the middle, we have an example of 2 logs being anchored to a live tree. Sometimes core members have to get in the water. This core member is about waist deep in that pool of water, trying to help the anchor. Because when let me pull up some of my props. And I'll show the Zoom people too. Zoom people, check out my wood drill. So here's the wood drill. I'm actually holding it upside down. Whoa. So we have this, yeah, it is crazy. This wood drill, it's got a 1-inch wide bit on it. We drill through the logs, and after we drill the hole, we get this threaded rebar, and we put that through the logs or the trees, and then we stick a plate and a nut at either end, and that really holds everything down. So that's pretty much what's happening in anchoring. Sometimes anchoring could happen on rocks too, like I was talking about earlier with those big chains. Anchoring allows a structure to stay in place longer, where it could capture more logs or wood coming downstream, could scour deeper pools. We really just want these logs to last where they're at. We want, like I was talking about, we want them to mimic the impact of an old growth redwood falling into the creek. So to do that, we need them to be stable there for a little while, like an old growth would be.
You've got a bandsaw cutting metal wires?
Yeah. So Elliot pointed out this bandsaw here. After we get this is the rebar. After we get that through the hole, we don't want to leave like a ton of excess rebar just sticking out, being a hazard. So we take these band saws and just cut them just a little bit above the nut and plate. Yeah, most of our, I'll talk about it a little bit more, but in the last couple of years, we've gone to mostly battery operated tools. Oh, I guess I talk about it on the next slide anyway. Here's our improvements that we've been making over time. We've changed our practice. For one, we're not cutting log jams out of the creeks anymore. At the time we thought that some log jams were not passable, but this is not really the case anymore. We're no longer using cables to hold structures in place. Now we're using rebar for logs and those big chains for rocks. That's mostly because the cables just don't quite last as long. They're not as stable, and we find that they get ripped out a little easier. And of course, we don't want that in the creek. So less is better. But with the structures, bigger is better. We want more logs, more complex structures, bigger logs like whole trees. Yeah, we're getting pretty robust with those. We are using less anchoring, like I talked about. We're trying to wedge logs between trees where we can. And we're also no longer using much gas power. For the most part, we have only battery operated tools, which is kind of a change that's only been implemented in like probably the last 4 or 5 years. Before we were lugging generators out there with us as well and plugging tools into the generators. And, a generator and a gas can is just like another big heavy thing to carry. So, and also, we don't really want to run a generator in the creek. We'd rather use battery operated stuff. So that is probably the most important upgrade we've made. All right, we've actually made it to our last item on the agenda. Wow, which is the impact of the salmon restoration program on fish and people. So let's talk about fish first. Basically, our impact is that we've really supported salmon with habitat diversity. We want to give them an array of opportunities and resources for survival. And the best way we can do that is by creating diverse spaces for them to hang out in. There is potential for vulnerability in extreme conditions like droughts or floods, and those conditions will only grow as climate change continues. For example, like I was talking about, extreme conditions like drought, that's a time where we'd want to create pools for them to be able to hang out in, pools where water will last through the summer, where they will stay in cold water. Or in floods, that's maybe a time where you want side channels or floodplains to be open so that the salmon aren't just stuck in a super fast channel. We want to provide them with like more slow water habitat too. Okay, let's look at some structures. I've got some really cool before and after photos. So now you can physically see the impact. This is the site of a structure on Fish Creek, which is a tributary to Yager Creek, which is a tributary to the Van Duzen, which is a tributary to the Eel. And Fish Creek is a pretty cool one that I like. Here's a spot where they decided they wanted to put a structure. There is just a little bit of undercut bank on the left there. That's pretty much the only cover in that area. Otherwise, if there were salmon in there, they would be pretty exposed. And by exposure, that could be either to predators or maybe there's a lot of sun in that area. So that could be like heat exposure if there's not much of a canopy. We also have, oh yeah, the water is pretty shallow, and in the summertime, it actually ran dry in this spot. Now here's the same spot in the summertime, and they put a structure in. So like I said, it ran dry. It's dry. So I just want you to note here how these logs are resting on the gravel. We also have another example of a wedge here, where the log is locked between the 2 trees up on the bank, and that helps to keep it in place. And it kind of acts as an anchor. All right, remember how that looks. Wow. This is this January, I took this photo. So this was built in 2018, and this is the same structure, 2026. So 8 years later, Let's check out how that gravel has scoured out under the logs. They're no longer resting on the gravel, so that kind of shows how much was scoured out, how it's a little bit deeper. That Okay, yeah, the deeper pool has been formed. The log running parallel to the creek provides substantial cover and places to hide, and this spot will be less likely to run dry in the summer. So that is kind of maybe more of a small impact. Let's look at some bigger stuff. Here's an example of a structure on Sproul Creek. This is the structure in 2022 and 2023. And then we have the same structure this last January. As you can see in the last couple years, it's really racked up a lot of wood. And this has created a lot more complex and variable habitat for the salmon, even compared to when we just put in these logs. You know, we put in these logs to provide more complexity, and it has only grown more complex over the years.
So that all happened naturally?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, well, these are the logs we put in here, and then all of that was natural, yeah. And while this wood might look intimidating, the fish are actually still able to get past it. Where, you know, maybe in the early days of SRP, this might have been the kind of thing that we would have cut out. But now we know it's good and we like it. We're gonna look at another structure on Sproul Creek. This is the only photo taken from this angle, so we'll look at some different focal points. But I just want you guys to note the presence of this large gravel bar on the right. If things were changed a little bit, that would be a really good spot for a side channel. All right, for your focal point, I want you to focus on this alder cluster right here, because perspective is changing. Now we're up here, where the first photo was taken kind of from this angle down here. So here's your alder cluster. Same one. We'll go back. Alder cluster. Alder cluster. All right, we're looking at it from above now. All the rest of the photos are from this perspective, so it just makes things a little easier.
So the gravel was scoured out and it's now deeper, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I'll talk you through some of the changes that happened here. So we put this large structure in that spanned the existing channel. And this included several logs and multiple boulders, so it was a pretty robust one. The gravel bar was totally washed out, and it opened up this nice side channel over here. So that big gravel bar that we were looking at earlier was right here. The whole goal of this particular structure was to open up that little side channel where the gravel was, so it totally did what we wanted it to do.
Why?
Why?
Why create a?
Oh, why create a side channel? Yeah. Just for an alternate route, you know, if we can give them as many different possible routes as possible. Yeah. You know, we want the fish to have multiple opportunities for survival. So, you know, maybe it happens that a fish can't get up this way, or maybe the flow is super fast coming over this and it's creating too big of a jump or a little waterfall. So this kind of just provides an alternate way. You know, it's the back roads for the salmon. You know, when you don't want to take the safety corridor, so you take Old Arcata Road. That's it. Here's the same structure. This photo was 2021 maybe, and this photo is about 2022 or 2023. Yeah. So the woody debris keeps collecting, and it only continues to provide more diversity and cover in addition to the structure. This is the same spot again in 2024. Yeah, the water flow is a lot higher in this one. I think this is probably the highest flow photo we have of it. The side channel provides the alternate travel route for fish migrating up or downstream. Oops, I clicked too fast, but oh well, we're here now. This is the same photo. I took this photo this January. This is kind of when we were in that dry spell after we had our higher flows and water went down quite a bit. But as you can see, the woody debris has continued to collect, just adding more to the structure. The side channel in this photo is no longer active. As you can see, it's not connected down here like it was before. However, it still provides this nice deep pool over on the side where the fish can rest and hide. And likely when the flow comes back up to higher flows, that side channel will just pop right back in. We also had this log from upstream join the party. It wasn't there before, and it totally just, put itself in there. And it gets caught up in the structure and adds to the complexity. So we like to see that. All right, that's about it on the impact on the fish and the stream itself. We'll talk a little bit about the impact on people, especially the core members. So core members have spoken very highly of their experience doing the salmon restoration program. They've mentioned it helping them with things like organizational skills, communication, teamwork, responsibility, stress management, building their strength. And for most core members out on these projects, this is their first time using these type of tools or even seeing these tools. So it's a really great learning and educational experience for them and provides them with some really good skills that they could carry on to other jobs and positions. Like, for example, grip hoists are used a lot in backcountry trails work to move boulders and rocks or trees. Or they learn how to use power tools that they might use in another position. Yeah.
Does a typical member
Yeah, so typically core members can stay for up to a year in the program. That's kind of like the goal is to reach a year. That's how you get your scholarships. But they can stay for up to 3 years, depending on if they choose to advance within the program and do some leadership opportunities. Yeah. But they could leave at any time if they don't like it. It's not like, oh, you're stuck here a year. No, you can. If they don't like it, they quit.
Well, talk about scholarship.
Oh, okay. Well, let me get through this last slide and then I'll talk about scholarships. Okay. This is where I think there's only 2 slides left. I put up this little quote from a core member that I like. I did some interviews with core members about their experiences doing the salmon restoration program and doing that type of work. And I pulled this quote from one of our core members. It says, "There are a lot of difficult parts of SRP, but all of it is so worth it. I think the most important part of SRP, besides helping out the fish, is understanding yourself. You're out there to do something that not a lot of people get to do or even think about." There's a quote from Luke Coleman, who's a core member at Fortuna. And last slide. Boop. Whoa. If you're feeling inspired after all that, I've got some things you can do. There's volunteer events you could go to. The Watershed Stewards Program leads multiple local volunteer events in the springtime and early summer. So if you have social media at all, you can follow the Watershed Stewards Program, and they usually post what kind of events they're happening.
Shape park.
Oh, Shea Park on Saturday. Okay, there's one. Believe not this Saturday, but the one after that, there's one at the Bayside Farm. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to talk about volunteer events, I would love to talk about volunteer events. Like Elliot was saying earlier, I love to volunteer. You could also, if you are a landowner or know a landowner who lives adjacent to a fish-bearing stream, I would love to talk to you. Love to talk about restoration potential or access. We love just going and checking out the streams and seeing what kind of work could be done. If you are part of an organization that needs a crew for natural resource work, it doesn't even necessarily have to be fish restoration work. Come talk to me. My business cards are in the back. Feel free to take them. I also help out with getting crews, work projects around the area. So if I can bring more projects to our center, that would be awesome. And lastly, you could get involved with the Eel River Watershed Improvement Group. Like I was talking about earlier, they're kind of our main companion in this type of work. You could donate, you could volunteer. They are the ones who put on the Science on Tap events at Mad River Brewery. So I suggest you attend one of those. They also have lecturers. And those are really fun events to go to. And yeah, that's a great way to get involved with them. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Foam and AMIC and City of Arcata for having me here. And also thanks to the whole CCC Earwig Fish crew for your support and all this. Yeah, that's it for me. Okay, let me go to Zoom land so I can see their questions just in case. Zoom people, if you have questions, it's easier if you type it in the chat. Oh, okay. I'll take in-person questions first. Yes. We've worked, not currently, but in the past, we have worked on Salmon Creek, which flows out by by the wildlife refuge. See what else would there be? Like Jacoby Creek or freshwater. Freshwater, I think they're doing their own stuff. I don't think we're too involved in it, but we have done some stuff upstream in the past. Elk? Oh yeah, Elk River. Yeah, we have a lot of projects in Elk River in headwaters. Yeah, I forget about that one. Yeah. Yes.
So do you have any data, how many miles this week?
Ooh. I don't think I think we probably have the data for it, but it's not compiled in a way. And probably be a lot of work getting stuff from the 90s and such. I'm trying to count all that. But I guess the answer is no. We do not. Not an exact mileage. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I wondered if you took, like, you showed the one picture, the two pictures, and then the second one was in October.
Mhm.
Do you document any like recovery streams where there are pools and water in the droughty parts of the year that the improvements creating?
Yeah, we're trying to get a little bit better with our documentation, especially now that our fish crew has kind of grown a little bit. But yeah, we like to take pictures of the creek before we put the structure in, and then right when we put the structure in. And then the goal is to come back like at least a winter season later and see some changes. But at
I
this
wasn't like.
Hmm.
What you did created.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say we do go back in the summer and look at that kind of stuff. Though I would say our summer work is largely focused on the restoration. We don't have quite as much time for monitoring. But sometimes we can monitor while we're out there doing the work. Yeah, definitely. Yes, Elliot.
Redwoods Rising is working on restoring forests. Do you team up with them?
We have not teamed up with them recently, and on forest restoration at least.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean maybe some of our other crews have, but not in the fisheries side of things.
And you said.
Not on Jacoby Creek, no. Yeah. Somewhere go in the back here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of. So it's difficult to get conveyed to the side of things, like. Are you able to go back to the days that you've lived back in 8 years? And you can see the physical flow and pictures and things, but to do research and see, how many fish are actually in this spot, is that something that you guys are able to do or through like?
Yeah, I would say some of that monitoring is it's kind of a teamwork between multiple organizations. I would say CDFW does a lot of the monitoring, especially for fish populations, that we don't do quite as much. Luckily we are able to monitor a little bit. With the CCC, we have a little bit of flexibility in how we use our time. So we can go back and look at some stuff and not have to worry about funding too much, depending on what our season looks like. But yeah, I would say sometimes it's not always us doing the monitoring. It could be another organization. Yeah, but like I said, I was talking about those like the SHARP and the QUAPAP, the watershed assessment programs, like all that data kind of gets shared between organizations. Yeah. Yes.
So in the beginning, you said that one of the hazards, the green degradation was cannabis farming. How does that harm the stream?
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest impact from cannabis was just water usage. Like they were really running the creeks dry in the summer. Yeah, or it was runoff from fertilizer or pollution. Sometimes we're going out to creeks and we're finding like decades old grow sites right on the creek bed. That does happen sometimes. So it could be numerous things from that, but definitely had an impact. Yeah. Okay. I do want to look at some of the Zoom questions real quick, and then I'll get back to you guys because there's quite a few popping up here. Okay. I'm sorry, Zoom people, to keep you waiting for so long. Okay. Leslie says, I've noticed a large area near Oric that has logs in place similar to what you have shown us. Do you know if this is also for salmon and conservation? I believe Leslie's talking about that area just north of Oric.
It's called.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Wow. So I don't know if folks in Zoom heard that.
Dan gave us all back. They're gonna turn it over to the Euro.
Hmm.
Big part of it.
Well, that's why I actually.